I'm about to go out urban sketching for the first time, so I'm going to take you with me. So I'm going to be testing out the Roman Szmal Urban Sketching palette, which I shared in my recent haul, and a lot of you were interested in seeing how this performs. So hello, if you're new to my channel, my name is Katie. I'm a full-time sketchbook artist, but I'm very much a nature and landscape based artist, so urban sketching is pretty out of my comfort zone. I do like to push myself, and I have done some urban sketching before in my sketchbook and as a theme over on my Patreon, but that was mostly from photos. It's very rare that I go outside and draw buildings from life. So this is going to be very new to me. Watercolour is also pretty new to me. I only started using it this year, but I love this tiny palette. This one is the blue one. They also do them in other colours, and I'll leave everything linked that I mentioned down below. But yeah, as I said, I am definitely a beginner, so bear that in mind. But we're going to start with swatching these in my sketchbook, and then I will meet you outside and we will go on our urban sketching adventure. So I hope you enjoy this one. Let's get on with seeing what colours we have to play with. Okay, so here it is, the mini watercolour set for Urban Sketchers. Like I said, they do these in other colours, and I got the blue one. So this is by Roman Szmal, and these are the colours we get in, which I'm going to swatch myself in my Venezia sketchbook, and I'm going to be using this brush, which is really lovely. This is the Pro Art Omar Win Quill Brush, the size 2. So that's what I'll be using to swatch. Now there are 4 spaces to put in your own colours. So I'm going to... I think there's one that I definitely know I'd like to take with me, but otherwise I'm going to keep it as it is, and then I thought at the end I'll talk about what I felt like was missing and the colours that I'm going to add into this set. Because I do like that there is space to add them, but I'm excited to see all the different colours I can mix whilst out and about doing my plein air work using just these 8 colours. So yeah, you can definitely add more here. With my bigger watercolour set, I took these rails out and then I could fit more in. But we'll see how we go with this one. I won't be able to fit many more in anyway, so I'll probably keep those in. We've got a small mixing well here, so the 2 there and then these ones here. I tend to fill these with colour. My mixing palette, my usual one, which I'll just grab now. If you've not seen it before, this is the size of the one that I use currently in my studio. I don't tend to take this out and about. It's quite heavy, so I'm looking forward to using the small one, but yeah, I definitely don't keep this very clean. And it will be interesting to see how I go from this to this, because I do tend to use quite a lot of colours in my work. I'm certainly not a minimalist when it comes to colour or materials, but my plan today is to take this out with me with just the 8 colours. So I'm looking forward to testing these out, but first I want to swatch them in my sketchbook and see what they look like. So I do really like Roman Szmal paints. I've got a couple in that bigger set I've just showed you, and I really like the formulation, so I'm looking forward to trying out these new for me colours. Okay, so first up is Nickel Azo Gold. This is PY150/PR102. Oh, that's a really lovely colour. Very, very warm. I did just buy a Quinacridone Gold by Daniel Smith, which is similar, but this one feels a bit more yellow. Let's see if I can add a bit more colour to this. So it does look very ochre-y actually when you layer it up. I think that'll be really nice. Lovely warm yellow. So there isn't really a cool yellow in this set, but I really like that one. And it does get a really nice buttery yellow when you're doing just the one layer of it. I've only started using watercolour this year, so you have to forgive me if I say anything wrong, but I'm definitely still learning quite a lot about colour, and that's through using watercolour and mixing a lot more. Next up we have the Aquarius Orange. This is PONA, so not sure what that means, if it's just pure PO. Oh wow, that's a really strong pigment. That's really, really nice. Looking at these colours, I don't know how they're very urban sketching, but obviously when you mix them all together and, you know, mix some of these oranges with the greens or the blues, you'll get some more sort of building tones. So I'm looking forward to giving this a test and seeing just how I can mix all these colours to be right for urban sketching. So that's really nice, and again, really strong pigment. I do really like Roman Szmal paints. We've got a bit of glare here, but this is how it's looking, and again, I'll show you when it's dried. Okay, next up is Quinacridone Red PV19. Now this looks like quite a cool red. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, wow, that's very, very pink. It is definitely a cool red. It's definitely got a touch of blue in there. Yeah, that's lovely. Actually, I don't know that I've got anything similar in my other colour palette. So all of these colours in this set are new to me, which is really fun and gives me a chance to try out ones that I don't already have. That's lovely. And again, just really nice and rich. Next up we have French ultramarine. So I do have a couple of ultramarines, but not French. So this one is PB29. Oh yeah, that's really lovely. So I tend to use these more for the sky, but again, I do mix it sometimes in with the reds to obviously create a more purple tone. I think using purple for shadows works really nicely. So I'm just going to add a bit more pigment to this side because I've gone quite light on the right hand side. But I really like that. I do like a warm blue, so this one is definitely very warm. It'll be interesting to see how I mix that with the cooler red. Again, we've got a bit of glare, so you can see if I hold this paper up, you can see a little bit more clearly. Okay, next up we have Cobalt Sea Blue. This sounds lovely. This one is pigment PB28. Oh wow, yeah, really, really vibrant. It reminds me of Cobalt Teal that I have in my bigger palette, but this one's a little bit more blue toned, I'd say. This one is a cool blue, so in contrast to the French ultramarine, so I guess it's a cool blue-green. I really like how that looks with the quinacridone red above it as well. There's a bit more granulation in that one. Is that the term? Where it's kind of splitting a bit on the paper, it's not as smooth. Next up we have Autumn Green, which I'm really excited about. Green is my favourite colour to use in art. I use it a lot in my landscapes. And yeah, I really like yellow toned, so warm toned greens, and that's definitely what this is. So I can get a really nice pale colour there. And let's add a bit more pigment. Oh yeah, it goes really dark. I really like this. This is definitely my kind of green. I think that looks very nice. You can definitely work up the tone. I'm getting used to that with watercolour because I obviously don't have to do that with gouache. So lots for me to still learn, but yeah, really interesting medium. I'm having a lot of fun with it this year. Yeah, I love that green. Autumn green. So there's quite a lot of numbers here. PG26, PY150 and PR122. So I think that means there's a lot more granulation in this one. And I can see that actually with the others as well. With the French ultramarine and the Cobalt Sea Blue. So that's really interesting to see that come through. Okay, next we have Shadow Violet. This one's PG50, PB29 and PV19. Now I literally just said about using a purple or violet as a shadow tone. So we've got one here. Already mixed. Oh, okay. That's not as violet as I expected considering the name. It's more like a Payne's Grey almost. But yeah, there's definitely a touch of cool tone to that one. Let's add a bit more. It's more like it feels more like a navy blue. Their swatch looks a bit more purple, so I wonder if when it granulates we'll see a bit more of that purple coming through. It's nice to see quite a dark tone in this set though, and I think that will be used a lot when I'm mixing. So I'm going to let that dry, and then our very final swatch is for Burnt Sienna Brownish. This is PBR7 Earth Pigment. Oh yeah, a really nice warm toned brown there. You can get a lovely pale colour as well, similar to sort of like a flesh tint. It's lovely and warm, and then build it up to be a bit more of a stronger brown. So I can see that working really well, and in some of my nature work too. Okay, so here are the swatches. I'm going to do my best to colour correct because my camera doesn't really like the colour of my desk when I've got a white sketchbook in. So I'm going to do that as best as I can. But some really interesting colours and not something that I would expect for an urban sketching palette. Obviously I would think more sort of brown tones, grey tones, but I'm looking forward to being able to mix those myself. So as I said in the beginning, I'm not an urban sketcher, so this is very new for me and I don't often do these sorts of views. So taking this colour out and about will be really interesting to see. So it's interesting to use this warmer yellow. So my bigger palette has sort of warm and cool shades for each colour, but this one is the one that I use the most and I want to take with me. This one is by the brand Schmincke and this is Buff Titanium. So I think that will be really helpful, but I don't think I'm going to take anything else. I'll talk to you later about the ones that I feel like would work with this colour palette because I know a few of you asked which ones you'd add in. But I want to test it out first. I do think that this will be a really nice neutral tone. This is quite opaque because of the pigments in it. I think there's a lot of white, so it does act a little bit more like gouache. but I'm going to add that one in. I do stick little magnets on the bottom of my pans, so he can just go in there. And so these are the 9 colours I'm going to be taking with me for my little plein air adventure next. So yeah, really looking forward to testing this out, doing a lot of colour mixing. I think that's going to be really important. So I'm going to take this sketchbook with me. I'll take my palette, of course, and then I'm going to swap out my brush for this one, which if you saw my recent haul where I also included this, I'll leave that linked up in the cards and down below. This is a travel brush, so I'm excited to give that its first outing. That will be perfect. And then obviously I need some water, so I'm going to be taking my Faber-Castell, I think this is a clip and go cup. It folds out so I can just pour my water in there. I was thinking about taking some water brushes, but I really want to use this brush and I think that will work nicer with watercolour. So I'm going to take that with me. And last up, I'm also going to take a fountain pen. So I've got my Fude de Mannen. Now I am in 2 minds whether to take the black one or the brown one. I think I'm going to take the black one and I'll use this for line work. So if you know my work, you'll know I'm not very minimalist at all. I do tend to take a lot of things when I'm out and about and I love to layer things up. But I'm going very minimal today, so literally this is all I'm going to be taking with me. I'm not taking any pencils or anything, we're just going to go in. So I think I'll rely on this for line work. So this is going to be very interesting, very out of my comfort zone, but I'm excited to bring you along and hopefully this is helpful for you to see. So let's get going, let's do some urban sketching with my mini Urban Sketchers watercolour palette by Roman Szmal. So here we are at a local town. I had done a sort of recce beforehand on Google Maps, which I really recommend, especially if it's your first time, just so that you're not super overwhelmed. So I did find a couple of benches, but this is where I kind of was let down on my planning because although it was dry on this day, it had rained a lot the day before. So the benches that I had planned to sit on to draw on were very, very wet. So I did struggle quite a lot because I had to draw standing up. And that was tricky for me, especially because it's obviously a subject that I'm not used to and needs a bit more detail. And I had to just try and do it in my sketchbook. So luckily this was a hardback sketchbook. So as I said, this is the Fabriano Venezia sketchbook. So that did help rather than having a soft cover, but my lines felt very, very wobbly and I wasn't very pleased with how my line work was going. I mean, considering I was doing it standing up, it's not so bad. But the other helpful thing was that I did take Mitch, my husband, along with me. So he is the cameraman for this shot. So thank you, Mitch, because I just didn't have anywhere to put my tripod. I had planned on just putting the tripod there and me being on the bench, but as you can see, I did have to stand up for the entire thing. So I chose to do my line work first, and now I'm getting out my paints. You can also see I have my flannel and piece of cotton to wipe my brushes in, and that was really helpful to just have sticking out my pocket. And then I did put my water pot on the little flower pot beside me so I could keep dipping into there. But here I am finally using the paint. So I found the blue really helpful for the sky, and actually the cobalt sea blue was helpful for the shop front. It wasn't super accurate, but it was fine enough for me to try and capture this shop. I really like the architecture, so that's what I chose to focus on, because I know that I definitely found it a bit overwhelming to not really know where to start or which building to do, which is why I found it helpful to look it up on Google Maps. So I did use a bit of the ultramarine and shadow violet there just to try and add some shadow. So it was very flat lighting, so I'm really glad I did decide to add that shadows, even though it wasn't accurate to what I was seeing. I think it added a little bit more life. I'm definitely not confident with watercolour, especially with urban sketching, so there's a lot of learnings that I took from just this little trip out. But here I am mixing up some sort of brick colour, so this was where the Aquarius orange was really helpful, and I mixed it in quite a lot with the nickel azo gold, and then the burnt sienna brownish, so those were definitely my most used colours. And then the quinacridone red, I didn't use that much. So that was probably the only shade that I didn't really need. And if the shop front wasn't blue, I don't think I'd have used the cobalt sea blue much either. It's probably helpful if you were doing more cool toned greens, but there was barely any green in this apart from the Christmas tree you can see in the middle when I did finally get to use the autumn green. But I did really enjoy building this one up. I think I could have definitely built it up more. It's still not very rich for me. Here I am just adding on a few more layers using the burnt sienna mixed with some of the Aquarius orange just to try and get that suggestion of the brick. And when I was creating this, I wasn't that pleased. I think it's okay, but obviously you're not going to love something that you're creating out of your comfort zone immediately. So I can definitely see the merits in it now, but I was being a little bit harsh at the time. I think because it felt really faded, and it definitely could have done with more layers and perhaps some mixed media, but I was challenging myself with just this palette. And again, it's just a learning point where I'm working out how to use watercolour and layer it up. The other thing was it was pretty cold, so I was standing, which didn't help, and I didn't do extra layers because I was so cold just standing there. So I decided to move on and do the other side of the spread. This is on the other side of Romsey Abbey, so a very different style of building, and I did try and focus on the gap in between because the abbey itself was quite intimidating. So I focused on the urban look through. So there was a lamppost, there was some street signage, road signs, and then there was a green at the back. So I wanted to focus on that and use a bit more of the autumn green. Luckily, this bench was much drier, so I was finally able to sit down. But I definitely felt like my lines were a little bit more confident here. But again, I do think the end result was quite faded. I definitely think that I'm kind of getting into urban sketching in the wrong season. I think spring, summer would obviously be a lot easier. I wouldn't get so cold. By the end of this, I was freezing, and I definitely understand now why urban sketchers have fingerless gloves for sort of autumn winter sketching. But for me, if I am doing plein air, I usually pick good weather, so I don't go out like in the rain. So generally I do pick sunny days when I'm doing landscapes anyway, so for me I would do the same with this urban sketching. I just wasn't expecting it to be quite so cold. So I'm starting with the lights. I did use the buff titanium, which was really helpful, and then again just using some of the burnt sienna and some of the Aquarius orange and the nickel azo gold just to try and get some of that texture and variation in the brickwork. I think this kind of lacked light again. There's definitely some areas where it didn't dry in time, again because it was so cold. So a lot of my colours did bleed into the other, where I was being a little bit impatient. Definitely could have done with a scarf on, and yeah, as I said, the fingerless gloves, but definitely lots and lots of learning here. I was trying to use a bit more of the nickel azo gold to try and get some of the autumnal colours in the leaves from the trees. But I'm still really glad I did this. I have been learning a lot, and I think you learn more when you are pushing out of your comfort zone. I did use the shadow violet quite a lot. That was really helpful to have, especially for mixing up some of my dark tones. So really glad I took that in, and yeah, I do think that the buff titanium was helpful too. Actually, here I did use the quinacridone red. That was perfect for the road sign, so on the tarmac and then on the lamppost. So actually that did come in handy. But for the other colours that I might add to this set, I think a cooler yellow would be helpful. I do really like Roman Szmal's bismuth yellow, so I think that would be good, especially for mixing more variation on greens. The other option would be sort of Hansa yellow medium. I think that would be helpful maybe instead, because I do find that's a little bit more neutral. The other one I use more for greens. And then a cooler green, so of course I use greens the most, so I do think another green would be helpful. I could make this autumn green different with the cobalt sea blue, but I also really like Winsor & Newton Perylene green, so I think that would be another one, just to try and make this an all-round sort of palette, so I have all of the options. And then I'm not sure on the fourth one, so I'd love to know your thoughts, if you've got this palette already and what you think would work, or what you've already added to it yourself. You can see a bit more of the granulation and the purple tone coming through, especially in that rooftop for the shadow violet. So I think that's my favourite out of all these colours, and one I might actually look into putting into my bigger palette. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. This was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I'm really glad I pushed myself, and I'd love to hear what you think down below. It's definitely not the best art I've ever made, but not every art has to be. I've just taken so much learnings from this, and I'm excited to put that into use. A big thank you to my patrons for their support. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Sunday in my new YouTube video. See you later!